Hi, my name is Gurpreet, and I'm the Senior Vice President at Simple AI. Simple AI is an agentic AI operating system. In this session, I would like to invite and welcome our founder and CEO, Sandeep. Hi, Sandeep. Welcome.
Hey, Gurpreet.
How are you doing, Sandeep?
Thank you. Doing good. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you for joining, Sandeep. Sandeep, we see a lot of excitement and action happening in the industry with respect to agentic AI. But at the same time, when we speak with partners and customers, we see they have a lot of concerns. At the same time, a lot of questions and bit of a confusion, and which is not good for the growth. It becomes our responsibility to make sure we help them address those questions, queries, etc. So we thought nobody better than you, Sandeep, because you're the one who's envisioned this thing a couple of years back, and you built a platform which possibly addresses all these questions and queries which we're going to talk about. So we thought we'll request you to join and help us address those queries and questions. So all set, Sandeep? Please.
Sure, Gurpreet. Would love to discuss these problems that we all are seeing it across the customer and market.
Excellent. So Sandeep, I'll start with a few questions, and these questions are something which our field team is actually experiencing. And as mentioned, as our people go and they talk to partners, they talk to customers across geographies. These are some of the frequent questions we come across, and I'm going to put them across to you. I'll request your inputs on it as to how do you see, because you got a global perspective, how exactly you see as the solution to these. First thing which we come across majority of the times is, concerned, is the situation where people are not moving beyond the pilots. So every enterprise we speak to has experimented with AI agents at some point of time or the other, but there are very few who are comfortable scaling them into production. In your experience, what do you think is holding these organizations back to move their AI agents into production?
So if you see, Gurpreet, most pilots are built as demos, right? They're not built as production systems. And they skip the plumbing that production actually needs: orchestration across tools, evaluations before every release, observability once it is live, and before that, if you can see them, a clear governance layer that how it's going to be, articulating while I can see that end-to-end traceability. It works great in sandboxes with one user and one happy path. But the moment you add the real users and real data and then the real, scenarios, then its failure mode goes on. And that's we find out there is nothing underneath it. That's exactly we see that, the problem with, because there are three kind of configuration that it can run with. Maybe one is the configuration level, from that, then the runtime dependency and the infra level dependency. The still that people are, doing on the, the app level configurations, and then they will be happy to do that. And that's what we exactly build to counter this for, the six pillar architecture, built in place: the orchestration, agents, data, evaluations, observability, and deployments is built too close so that team, won't able to reinventing the infrastructures themselves. So that's what we have seen it, the gap from pilot to production.
Got it. So it's kind of a building their confidence that they can move to production and then helping them scale, right?
Correct.
Excellent. Thank you so. So next point I'll put across is a very basic thing, which is about an question of coexistence, because majority of the organizations we go to are probably running on Copilot. Some of them have different models. Maybe they build agents in different tools, but they're very concerned, or they have an inhibition of moving to another platform that they feel it is going to replace all of what they've built. So, according to you, how should the leaders think about consolidation versus rip and replace? What should be their mindset?
I think it's very, I mean, pretty much connected question, especially once we talk to the customers who has been building last 2.5 years, doing their POCs and on multiple platforms and multiple places. So if you ask me, rip and replace is really a wrong ask. And honestly, it's a wrong pitch itself. So enterprises have a real sunk investment in Copilot, specific models, and point tools, and they should keep what's working. We built Simple AI to be model agnostic and hyperscaler independent specifically is to sit above all of the stack, which is an orchestration governance layer, not in competition with. The question as a leader we should ask isn't what do I rip out, and it's what that layer that I let's, all of the operate under one set of controls. So which is like, the things are working along with it, a layer that can work with the things are working in tandem and then move from their POC to production and more adoption within the enterprises even. It's not about just, if something someone have built and it's working, we should rip and replace. And I think it's a wrong theory to move on. So if it is nothing is working, you should just directly say that it's not working out, figuring out all of your strategy, especially around like, hey, what my cost gonna be, what my evaluation, what my observability, what my traceability, all my governance is in place. So which tool, which platform, or which system I need to use it. And then from there that I can take it from, let's say, the strategy, either I need to work with the tandem or either I need to work with the entirely rip and replace, or maybe just a mix of the strategy.
Yeah, completely agree. And in fact, I think coexistence is not a question. I think that seems to be the solution.
Yeah, correct.
Right. Okay, excellent. Next point, which a lot of time comes, is the trust. You see, CIOs, they tell us that it is not the technology which is worrying them. It is the trust in an agent which is going to act inside their enterprise. Okay. So according to you, what has to happen before an organization reaches that level of trust that they can let agents run inside their organization without, with all the confidence they need?
So I think this is pretty much pointed question, and then this is the one of the governance piece that we have been encountering through. See, trust isn't a decision any enterprises make once. It's earned incrementally through the visibilities. You don't hand an agent right access to the core system from a day one, right? You start with the scoped permissions, you make every action auditable, you run evaluation continuously so drift gets caught before it causes damages. And you built in the ability to pull the agents back at any moment. Usually, in industry, we call it as a kill switch also, by the way. If anything goes wrong, I really want to press it. So trust follows evidences, not promises, and especially the platform that has to build to produce that evidence constantly. Enterprises doesn't and doesn't like the black boxes. They need the entire visibility, start from every input and output, every traceability, where the guardrails, how my governance looks like, what my control looks like. Can I just have this button? If anything goes wrong, I can just press that kill switch button so that I can easily able to just get out from the situations. Also, how do I control the models even? And that's what we have seen more and more sovereignty into play, where the all enterprises knowledge and their ecosystems running within the premises, including the model as well, and they will be keep on learning from the behavior or the secret sauce that any enterprises owns, and with their data and then their traceability to going through their either RL learning or either from the skills memories, so that that become the autonomous way to do that. And that's all comes from the greater control, what's really going on, the no black boxes around, and it is running securely, scalably within the premises even. And if it is you're using, let's say, external system, then properly guardrail systems. That's how you earn that, and control goes back to the enterprises users so that they feel empowered and they can give the human input to make it pretty efficient.
Okay. So would it be fair to say that, trust is an outcome of governance? I mean, for the sake of
It
understanding.
is a one of the pillar. I won't say that is
Okay.
only the one. I would
Hmm.
say the trust is all about that you make human and machine together, and then make comfortable that human is in par with machine, and then the machine can take it over. That's how the trust being earned. Same goes for human as well.
I agree completely. Thank you. Thanks for that. Next thing which usually gets asked, and this is a very common thing, I think most of the opportunities, I'll not say almost all, is concerned about build versus buy. People are saying that if we need, whatever you explained, we need it, but the large enterprises and also some of the large partners that uh, should they build their own an agentic AI platform or they should buy one. So these are the two, they always have this dilemma in their mind. So where is the line for you actually? And what do enterprises usually get wrong about this decision if they make a decision to build on their own?
I think this is again, the enterprise's DNA lies on, right? Especially like, what kind of DNA you have. And then it's pretty hard questions that they need to ask themselves, like, build versus buy, especially these large OS or the very deep, platform that really enabling you. So one is like, hey, if you see build where it's genuine differentiation. It's not about that somebody building, I'm on also going to build it, because there are too many things into play. And while in this era, you lose the GTM, you lose the time to value and time to market. How you really going to, and then what really makes a difference if you build, what's really make a difference if you buy. So it's always like, and along with what strength you have. So if you have a deep tech, if you have a great engineering team, that's like, building is your forte, and then lean team that to go around and build it, as people still believe in building, and they know that they're gonna build it, and especially that they know the workaround. And if really that is like, feel it where you lack it and still decided, then there is really a wrong decision. I usually see it, and people realize it a bit later. Also, like, the GTM. It's not about only the building once you have the great team. Let's say if something you have in hand and you can still go to the market and still decide that strategy back in hand and then executing, which means both the parallel can happen. So always believe where the genuine differentiation, let's say your workflows, your domain logic, your proprietary data. And if you don't have, then buy the plumbing, especially let's say orchestration, evaluation, observability, deployments. That undifferentiator heavy lifting, and enterprises constantly underestimate the ongoing maintenance and cost of owning it. It's not the one-time build, it's the permanent team. We built Simplify from a day one with a lot of deep engineer and senior engineers, especially so own that plumbing, so enterprises team can put their best people on the workflow, and that matter for their businesses. So usually we see that in, and this kind of matrices is always, comes from the DNA that usually enterprises has. So their differentiation is largely that we have seen it from their secret sauce, their data, their domain knowledge, their proprietary data. So that's what they need to, focus on. And that's what we have seen it be, and an enterprises is being doing with.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense, Sandeep. Actually, it's more about focusing on your core business, focusing more on your domain, focusing on what your outcome is needed from from what you're trying to achieve rather than try and build yourself. So there is nothing wrong. I mean, you can build, but depends what you want to prioritize. So yeah, makes sense. Thanks for that. Another interesting thing which comes is, you know, people do have small data science teams, some of the large organizations, of course, and the people whom we talk to, who have a team and they have big ambitions as well. Now, how do organizations scale AI without scaling the headcount at the same rate? That's a big question which they have in their mind.
Yeah, I think everyone want it and everyone need it. And especially they can do. So you scale by making agent building a composition exercise rather than from scratch engineering exercise, I believe. If every new use cases require a data scientist or a hand wire orchestration or a retrieval or evaluation again and again, and hand count has to grow linearly with ambition, then there is a fundamental problem. Because then the any platform or any OS that's not at all be usable. So which means it has to be a central layer that is reusable conductor and agents, that less of specialized team to configure rather than build breaks and that link. and a small team can support a much larger footprint of production agents. That's what you see, that if you have the OS layer which SimplyAI has, usually then the set of people that they can start shipping much faster than if of any use case they will start building it in. And that's what the make a lot of differences, because if every new use cases and every new, let's say, agents or a workflows, you're really gonna build it from the scratch and you're not using any reusing component, then it's really, really hard to keep the small team, because it's not possible. Then you will have to grow your teams linearly.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, it makes sense. Absolutely. Another thing which people have, obviously security is definitely a concern for everybody. So in terms of, then this is more about security and the access. And one question we constantly keep hearing from the security teams of all the enterprises and partners we talk about, that if an agent can reach our applications, data, and APIs, how do we make sure it only does what it is supposed to do? And how do leading, according to you, how do leading enterprises are actually solving it on the field?
Interesting. So agent itself should not, hold broad credentials, in my opinion, because access is scoped at the tool and API level, enforced by a policy engine, because you should have, like, a large policy which agents, or depend on that, what sub agent or a tool that should own, and sits in within the orchestration layer, not inside the agent's own reasoning. Then there is a problem. So even if the model does something unexpected, the blast radius is bounded by what it is being permitted to touch the first place, and least privileged for the agents, exactly like least privileged for the humans even. So that's what I see while doing and then this is while you're doing the orchestration and design the platforms and architecture.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. Perfect. Next question which comes is, the autonomous decisions which an agent can make. And the query usually is that, as agents are becoming more autonomous, how do organizations make sure that they stay within the business policies instead of doing everything that an agent is technically capable of doing? I mean, it's a very basic question, but we do get it a lot of times in the field.
So first of all, we need to, separate capability and permissions. These are two things we should not, mix it. Uh, an agent might be technically capable of executing a payment, let's say, or overriding a limit, but business policy has to be encoded to an explicit checked constraint evaluated before an execution, any action execute, not audited after the fact even. So that's the difference between an agent that's a powerful and an agent that's a safe to deploy. So depend on the scenario, that's like, gonna go. So it's like controlled environment where if anything, happening, it's double checked, going through your policies, then the guardrails, and then access that is being given to these agents. So that is like in an initially that you can have it learn from their skill, which a human can intervene, and slowly these the learn from the human or a data points from, and then it become the autonomous in play. And I usually say that have the kill switch as well to contain the blast radius.
Of course. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Sandeep. One question specifically, one organization asked it and they were very vocal about it, and we thought we'll bring it to you, ask your feedback. They said that if the governance, they need governance at three levels. One at the individual user level, second, the agents they build, and third is the entire organization when they actually start consuming. Do you think is that the right way to think about it, or is there a simple model instead of looking for governance at three levels?
I would say it's needed at three level,
Okay.
and the framing is also right. I wouldn't simplify it. Each level fails differently if you skip it. Let's say user level governs who can ask for what. Agent level governs what a given agent is scoped to touch. Firm level or a tenant level governance aggregate exposure and spend across every agent running at once. So miss any one of those, you've got a
Hmm.
blind spot. which is why that we build the observability pillars to the governance to that so that you can have all the three layers, not just the aggregation of it. So think from, let's say, if you're a bank, now that all the policies, all the rules, regulations that are on the tenant level to the particular bank, and bank can have, let's say, multiple application. It could be a financial services or let's say wealth management or let's say HR or let's say in a different domains or a department, which let's say if I'm building 5 agents into a financial services for the particular bank, let's say credit financial analyst agent. Now this particular agent have a different level of guardrails, there are different scenarios, and then the people who use it there, they are also different. And the policies are also different. Now the third level that people who will using it, so the user level ones. So this is how you're gonna build it. And same goes for their skill, their memories, their contextualizations. So it become more and more complex to the deeper level. So it has to be on 3 level.
Got it. Yeah. Thanks for that. By the way, next question is again related to bank. You mentioned bank. So next question, which usually gets asked, is about the bank or an investment organization. So obviously, data is the asset. Okay. Now, what they are keen to understand is how do they absolutely make sure that the model or an agent never sees the data what it should not be seeing? What's the guarantee for that?
I think that's important layer at data segmentation itself. So data segmentation has to be enforced at retrieval layer. So tied to the same identity and entitlement system, the rest of the enterprises already trust. So not left to the model behavior, because let's say if you have any IAM policies or any system that you are using, then you need to pass all the level and then credentials and then access level actually to the agents, and they will be checking before even accessing these data and then validating and then pass it through and have the guardrails in place. So practically means, let's say if any RAG access control or that mirror existing a data permission, so no silent fine tuning on sensitive data without a lineage tracking. Also for the most sensitive firms, the ability to run the whole stack inside their own environment. So nothing sensitive data ever leaves their parameter at all. Yeah, I think largely that's we talked about it, what could be the secure system. It could be the air gapped or a on-premises which is running within those firewalls and containers even. So the idea again is like, how you really, make sure that everything, you are accessing with the proper access governance and along with your, proper policies and the guardrails.
Correct. Perfect. I mean, another question tying into this one would be about human in the loop, which is something obviously which most of at some point or the other you definitely need a human in the loop. So where should a human typically sign off? How do organizations decide which decision an agent should make and which is that a human should actually be making it? I mean, should this be uh, is this something they should be concerned about, or should they take it as a thumb rule, or any what do you see exactly happening in the
So,
actually on the field?
so one is like you asked me, prior to that, like trust, right? Why is human trust the agents? So it's about that you work with them, then you get the trust. I can see that what are you doing, without a black box, then I'll get more trust. Also, if let's say I'm setting my guardrails policy, then the system behaves that as expected, then I'll gain more trust to it. At the same time, I may not go to the directly to the autonomous behavior of these systems. I really want to work with the systems and then, give approval or learn, from like what's really going on and then trust it. For this, like to start from, let's say, day zero or the zeroth point, you really need to put the human in the loop. What's really going on? How you really, do that. So I'll draw the line on reversibility and materiality, not in task type. A high value or hard to reverse action is, let's say, approving a large loan or a releasing a payment or changing a legal term. should keep a human in the loop, regardless of how confident the agents. The low risk or repetitive or easily reversible actions can autonomously run on the strong post hoc audit instead of a pre-approval gates. The threshold move in a trust where specific workflow buildup, but the framework should be principled, not the ad hoc. So the idea again, as I said, is like to, you know, put it into the loop and then figuring out like, and learning from the human. And that's what the agentic skill comes into play. Where, we build a system where you learn from the human, and that's time you review them and merge their skill into and then becoming their skill as a resources, and then the agents start learning and take the autonomous decisions. So there is a point once you start, and there is a point where you review and you see that how much of autonomous behavior you are showing and with what kind of accuracy, along with all the guardrails and distributed tracing, everything you can look and feel with the observability. So this is a proper way to go from, let's say, initially from a human in the loop to the, entirely autonomous, and also the where we need to put the human, especially the high touch points.
So you said there is a point to which you can have human beyond, or you can have agents running beyond that. It has to be, and it should be human. But this point seems to be dynamic. You can always
Yeah,
change this. You can change
it,
at any point of time, right?
it should be dynamic. Yeah, it should be dynamic.
Yeah, perfect,
Because
excellent.
the autonomous agent's gonna take it over, and then also to recheck them why we need the human. So we put in
Hmm.
agents who check the agents even, and then have the the guardrails within those agents so that you will not miss it. Even human can miss it if you ask me.
Hmm.
So I think the idea again is to put to control from 0 to 10th point. There is a journey, and we
Hmm.
need to live that journey with all the confidence and trust with the human, especially in
Got it.
enterprise scenario. Yeah.
Got it. Perfect. Makes sense. You mentioned guardrails. So, you know, everyone says guardrails, Sandeep, but what does guardrail actually look like in production? And how is it different from just a policy or a document which possibly, nobody reads? What's your take and what's your experience of that?
So I think this is pretty common, especially on governed or let's say regulated environment where the policies are pretty important. But a policy document is something a human is supposed to remember. But think around it, how many of us we usually do that? A guardrail is code that runs before every actions. Let's say input validation, scoped tool permissions, any business rule we need to check it, or and a kill switch that can hold then agents, and then it enforced whether or not if anyone read the documents usually. So if you see the guardrails in a multiple shape and form, where view make sure that if anything you guardrailed, it's happening. And
Hmm.
that's really our evaluations pillar is like, the guardrails that execute in critical path, not the governance. It's live in the wiki itself. So it's the idea is very clear, like, how you really can build it in a real scenario.
Got it. Perfect. Thanks for that. Uh, Next thing is I will head towards certain production incidents which people are concerned about. The engineering leaders often they'll tell us they're less worried about the hallucinations and they're more worried about an agent taking wrong action in the production. Okay, so what are the biggest operational risks you have seen practically? Having implemented it at several organizations, what are the biggest operational risks you've seen, and how are companies mitigating these production risks?
Uh, that's the that instinct is right. I mean, a wrong answer in a chat window is, embarrassing. A wrong action against a live system is a real incident. The mitigation is a state exposure, sandbox first, and then the shadow mode alongside a human. Then the limited blast radius autonomy, and then broader rollout. All gated by a continuous evaluation pipeline that testing against real production patterns, not just the original test set. So how we have been doing, like, from the building perspective, we build our own layers. We start from, let's say, what really an agents need to do, then we start building those into with the agents or multi-agents in tool, and then we test it across the board, have the versioning, testing autonomously, and then the evaluations in place, and then run it. Also, like, where are you running it? That's also important. What are you exposing with? So it's like, the engineer leaders also, like, the way that we all have been doing, we need to, yet we are constantly changing. We are building where the agents are just looking at the logs and figuring out if there is any problem and then fixing those problem at the same time. So we have been building at Simple AI with the entire layer to that, where the building, testing, and then monitoring also being, automating it.
Okay. So completely agree with this aspect, but let's assume something goes wrong. The agent has taken the wrong action. What happens next? How do the best teams ideally contain this thing, whatever wrong action has been taken, roll it back or learn from it?
So first of all, contain it first, because we
Mhm.
need to containment. If the blast radius, we need to really, really contain. So the one is the kill switch, and then that is why you should have the kill switch, which the moment you press it, it stopped immediately. Versioning the behavior, because that's important, from, let's say, whatever the behavior has happened since the agents has been running. So you need to know that what it has impact for the particular versions. So if we need to roll back, then we should be knowing that what was the last known good configuration rather than the debugging live. Also, the
Mhm.
root cause, using the full observability trails that we have given, so that agent can saw and decided what really gone wrong and why we need to start from this point rather than from the beginning. And that's what the more and more smarter and effective system does. And then fix goes back to the particular, let's say, tool or a service where you can really see that, hey, this is working, and then fix that particular one. So evaluation suite will keep on going where the regression that's happening, and that specific failure, then you just fix the behavior of the agency.
Got it. Perfect. That's great. And Sandeep, another thing comes about accountability and audit. We say, suppose, let's say, you're an organization where you're approving loans, and you have an agent which has approved the loan. Okay, it updates the customer record, it triggers a particular payment. After 6 months, there's an audit, and it gets questioned as to, how was this decision made? So how are enterprises thinking about accountability and auditability? I know you did mention most of the places there are pilots which are on, but pilots is fine. When you put it into production, then what are they thinking about these, this kind of a auditability and accountability?
So first of all, I think you need an immutable traces. You can't have
Mhm.
it like, and then that's what we've been talking about, like, the traceabilities, that is immutable ones, and that's the distributed traceability. So if any context that you retrieve, any model and any policies and versions that is being moving, then you know exactly what's happening into the ecosystem and who is using that even. So entire the, especially the user lineages even, where who is doing what within the ecosystem, their versioning, their models, their contextualization, everything immutable. So it's easier to do that, and also the entire contextualizations. So every decision that you capture, it's not reconstructed after the fact even. So it's all about how observability, you just to build the first class pillar of architecture. So exactly the reason that we build our own observability layer that can have all the traces in place, and then give you exactly what's gone right, what's gone wrong, and from there that you can learn from these systems. And either you can go through your RL system, where, let's say, you can have a common evaluations protocol and then put it there to these model you can fine tune. Also, that you can go from the skills or let the agent start learning also.
Perfect. Thanks for that. You mentioned observability. So from observability, I have another. I'll ask you that question. I have that in mind, but I'll first ask you about something about what you just described in accountability and audit. This is explainability. So regulators and boards, they increasingly want AI decisions to be explainable. You're taking a decision, they should be explainable. So if is a full explainability realistic, and what should the enterprises be able to show when they're asked to show something or explain something?
So full mechanism of, let's say, explainability of large models, internal reasoning isn't realistic today because these models have a mixture of experts and then a lot more things being inside to that. But I I would be pretty much cautious of anyone who is claiming it otherwise. What is realistic is actually that regulators and boards are care about is explaining the decisions. So you can use, let's say if you're using your planning agent, is exactly tells you what exactly it is doing and logging it as well. What the agent data is being used, what is your traceability looks like, what is your policy being checked. So every decision that is happening through the particular, let's say actions, it's being immutably right. And then seeing it like, hey, these are the traces that we have been doing it, and these are the reason that from the agent that decided to invoke these tools or as skills or other particular workflow for these agents even.
Yeah, perfect. Makes sense. So coming to the point which I wanted to ask a question about observability, you see, you cannot manage what you cannot see. So as a leader, what should the leader be, what should they be monitoring once they have agents running across all the business? What should they be monitoring?
So, in my opinion, is like there are parameters. Of course, one is from performance, your reliability, your cost, your token economics, your latencies, and then figuring out what's really going on a daily basis, weekly and monthly basis, and see that if there is any anomalies. Also figuring out what cost distribution per runs even, and then figure it out what all the top 10 or 20 traces is causing those issue and analyzing them on a recurring basis and then refine it. So these are the things I would say that people are especially in enterprises way that eventualizing, and along with the agentic hours as well, especially for productivity perspective.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sandeep. One final question. Uh, this is about reliability at the edges. So it is said that agents are only as good as the systems they touch. How do you keep these agents reliable when the underlying data or an integration itself is messy, or it's dynamic, it keeps on changing? So how do you keep them reliable?
So one is like, if while you're designing your, let's say agents or tools or workflows, usually that, the nodes that you're doing it, what you really want to do at fallback, what you really want to do with the, let's say if anything get fails or a retries, or how many trying to, retries that you need to do. If there is external system which is already been suffering from, let's say, DDoS attack or it's down, then what you really gonna do it? Or how do you make sure that if it is everything is nothing is working, then giving a notification or trying to find out the end path what is really going to work. Whenever the end of the light that you see, then again retry automatically. So that's how the reliability comes into play. Also keep eye on observability entirely, like what's your reliability looks like. So we usually see, and then especially the customers see the reliability in terms of, let's say, daily and basis, where we see that, hey, there are across thousands of the agentic execution, there are five, let's say, being failed, and why they have failed. You once you click and then you go in traceability, you figure it out exact node why it's failed, maybe a timeout or a starvation or anything that you can, and then start healing it even. So this is how usually you can have it, and in terms of the metrics and then reliability. The again, it's everything goes into the fundamentals.
Very insightful information, Sandeep. Thank you so much. This has been a very interesting session. I have a lot of other questions, but I think we'll park them for now. We'll take up a second round. where we'll again request you to share your insights. And these insights would be more to do about, the answerability to the board in terms of ROIs, etc. But that's for next time. So for now, Sandeep, once again, thank you so much. Very insightful session. And this is coming from your experience of what you built and also what you're actually seeing, which is happening on the field, having, working all across, with your partners and enterprises which are spread globally. So thank you once again, Sandeep. Really appreciate it and look forward to speak with you soon.
Thanks, Gurpreet. Looking forward to talk again.
Thank you, sir. Take care.